Hello there, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project Podcast, your resource for helping you break free of the stressful, dogmatic diet and exercise rat race. Matt Schifferly here, founder of the Red Delta Project and authors of the books Fitness Independence and Smart Bodyweight Training. Today, we've got a huge surprise for you. My guest, Al Kavadlo. If you haven't heard about Al Kavadlo, he's one of the masters in the world of calisthenics, bodyweight training, multiple books through Dragon Door. He's got some new programs that have been out for about 9 months now that he's going to share with you today. We're going to be talking a lot about where the future of calisthenics is going on, some of the new discoveries he's been making. And it's just going to be a great hash session on calisthenics, bodyweight training, and practical applications. So, Al, welcome once again to the Red Delta Project Podcast.
Especially, we got a lot of exciting stuff to discuss.
Absolutely. All right. So, been a while since we've talked. Catch us back up to speed with some of the latest projects that you've been involved in. The Get Strong Challenge and your Universal Strength. Let's start with the Get Strong Challenge. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, last year, my brother Danny and I released a book through Dragon Door, as you mentioned, called Get Strong. And this was the first book that either of us had done that contains a detailed program with exact sets, reps, exercise sequences, progressions. And, for years, Danny and I have done a lot of writing and a lot of books and blogs about bodyweight stuff. And we always like to kind of leave things a little more open-ended, teach people about principles, teach people about progressions. But so many people just kept saying to us, can you just give us a program to follow exactly to the letter? So eventually we gave in and did that, and the response to it was super, super huge. And we started a challenge contest for people to, hopefully egg each other on to stick with the program and inspire one another. And it went really well. And now we've got a second round of that challenge going on. So people who didn't hear about the book until after that first challenge had ended can get in on it. Mm-hmm. And then I've also got another program that I released toward the end of last year called Universal Strength. And Universal Strength is an online video program. So it's a very different format than my previous work, which has pretty much all been books, and I have the iPhone app as well. But this is a course that you can follow along with. It's 30 days. There's videos showing the exercises, there's motivational videos, there's information on diet, and the theme with Universal Strength is that it's no equipment at all. Get Strong is a calisthenics book that has pull-up bars and, just pull-up bars and a floor in it. But some people were saying to me, hey, I don't even have a pull-up bar. What can I do just in my living room with no equipment? And Universal Strength was created with that client in mind.
Now, I love the idea of just as minimalist as possible, and I really think there's a lot of benefit to it because over my years of training, I've noticed that the better I get at my training, the less stuff that I need. So minimalist is not so much just, it's convenient, you don't need a lot of equipment, but I think it's a good indicator, too, of just how proficient you are in the training itself. And taking a minimalist approach right off the bat like that kind of forces that to happen a little bit faster because it took forever for me to get to this point. So Universal Strength is like a fast track to minimalist training. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think that everything you just said I completely agree with. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it's funny. People write to me about the Universal Strength program and they say, Al, can I add some weights to this program? And I say, well, if you want to modify it, you can modify it. But the whole point of this program is that you don't need any weights, that you don't need any equipment. Mm-hmm. And that idea is so different from what people are often told by fitness trainers and by marketing departments that it's so mind-blowing to people, even though it's such a simple concept to people who've experienced it.
Now, is it like in the Get Strong challenge in your book, which, by the way, I think that's such a smart way that you did it because unlike you, I'm like, give people principles. It's kind of hard to know the routine or program that someone can thrive on because everybody's different. But you two did it in such a smart way because you almost, when I read through it and started to apply it for a few weeks, I was like, it's like a video game kind of deal where you go at your own pace. Yeah, but it literally, you see the page and it's like the green and the red, pass, did you not pass kind of thing. And it's so flexible. And yeah, I agree. Like people like, I need a program. I'm like, it's so hard to do a program, but you guys nailed it.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to hear you say that. I can completely relate, and that's why we didn't put out a book with a definitive program in it for so long. It's because it's really impossible to write a one-size-fits-all program because people are coming in at different points. Maybe they already have a background in other kinds of strength training. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're injured. Maybe they're healthy. Maybe they're young. Maybe they're older. Maybe, there's so many factors, like you said. So designing this program in that sort of, you can't move on to the next step until you can accomplish X, Y, and Z, it gives people little goals along the way to strive for. And then the people who are more advanced can jump in a little bit later with the program. People who are more from a remedial level can stay on the first few weeks a little bit longer if they need to. So it allows for both. It allows to have a very strict program to follow, so it takes the guesswork out. But then it also does let you personalize it a bit to your own strengths and weaknesses. And I like that you appreciate the graphics and the look of the book and the layout of it. Because, as you know, such a big challenge as a trainer is actually getting people to adhere to a program. It's not just a matter of having the program. And putting a format that makes it a little bit more fun and makes it feel like a game. I love hearing that gave you more adherence to it, because that's what we're hoping will happen.
Yeah, I just think it's the details, like the graphics and the ability to be flexible yet structured and stuff. I don't know if people really understand when they come into any sort of fitness world right off the bat, but especially calisthenics, the amount of expertise and knowledge that goes into making a program like that's flexible yet structured, that's fun yet it gives you direction and everything. I mean, that's not something you whip up like over a weekend. I can make up a workout routine in 5 minutes and say, here you go. But as I explained in my latest book, like that's just me guessing. That's guesswork.
Right.
And this takes the guesswork out of it to a large degree without you having to physically be there to program it with them. Because when I meet with clients, it can take me as much as a month or two to finally start to dial in their program to what they need. This does it on autopilot almost with just this book and their own experience. That
means a lot coming from you, man. Thanks so much. I know you appreciate how much nuance there is to this stuff.
Yeah, it is not easy. In fact, when I first heard about the Get Strong book and the challenge, to be perfectly honest, I was pretty skeptical. I was like, sure. You can't do this. Like, no, it just can't be done. I've tried doing it, and I've failed miserably across the board many times. And when I heard about the Get Strong Challenge and people are adjusting and hearing people's stories, I'm like, holy hell, they did it. They actually accomplished it. It just goes to show the level of expertise that you and Danny bring to the table with this sort of thing. Now, is the
the other thing about the challenge is it's called a 16-week challenge, but a lot of people, like we were saying, really it takes longer than 16 weeks to get through the program. I don't think a lot of people are starting out at the very beginning and making it to passing the final phase in only 16 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I've heard from people, the book's been out for over a year now, who've just been chipping away at this thing gradually and staying on each week as long as they need to. Mm-hmm. And now they're getting to the end, and they've made some really amazing transformations. So to a certain extent, I can relate to your skepticism, because when you look at that and you think, come on, 16 weeks, can you really go from a complete novice to a master? And the truth is you can't in that little time. But that format allows anyone to kind of jump in and modify the program. And sometimes, as you know, it's overwhelming for people to think much beyond a timeline. Mm-hmm. That's 16 weeks long. For some people, even 16 weeks is way too much of a commitment. Mm-hmm. So this stuff is tricky. You have to try to find a middle ground with a lot of it. And man, it really means so much, everything you just said, that you had that experience with it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So is the Universal Strength program kind of on a similar structure? Is it self-adjusting, or is it a different approach? What's going on?
So Universal Strength is a 30-day program. Mm-hmm. So it's a shorter timeline, and it has all floor exercises, all body weight stuff, and it's a little bit less of a pure strength program. It has more mobility stuff built in, a little bit more conditioning work. But, as you know, and we've talked about, a lot of these things overlap. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I love about the Universal Strength Program is it bridges a lot of these gaps between pure strength work and mobility work and conditioning work, and it blurs some of these lines. It incorporates some things from yoga. It incorporates some more traditional calisthenic stuff. It incorporates some animal movements and just a lot of different types of things. And people sometimes don't realize how expansive the world of bodyweight training is and how much it can include. And I wanted people who maybe were used to doing more push-ups and pull-ups and the strength-based stuff, to get challenged by some of these other aspects of it. Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I was thinking about that the other day, about transitional movements and flowing movements. And one of the things I haven't really looked into it as much as I probably should, but it's been on my radar a lot more, is this notion that bodyweight training can be so fluid and going from transitions and moving the body in directions other than just up, down with classic repetition stuff. And I had a boss who used to call movements, she used to call them crack fillers. She's like, when your program is based just on moving a weight or your body up and down, you're getting a lot with that, but there's little corners and spaces that you're missing. It's like painting a room with a roller, but all the details and cracks and edges around the window and stuff, you're still missing that. And that stuff can be very profound and very impactful over time. So those animal flows and the transitions and stuff, that's really important to start incorporating into our training more often, to avoid...
That's a great metaphor.
Injuries.
Right. You cover a lot. A squat is like that roller. You can get a lot done with that exercise, but you can't get everything done with it. You need that smaller paintbrush to get those corners. That's a really great way of putting it.
Yeah, and if you walked into a room that was just done with a roller and you left all the edging undone and there's little details and stuff, those details are just going to stand out to you. And it's the same thing. Like, I can squat. Like, people all the time, they're like, oh, I could squat 500 pounds. But they still grunt and groan when they're getting out of their car. Exactly. Yeah. They're like, oh, man, the floor is so far away, I just dropped my keys kind of thing. And I used to be that. And I think that's a lot to do with where calisthenics training is starting to head into, with like Mike Fitch and Animal Flow and stuff. Because when you fill in those cracks, suddenly the big stuff like the squats and the push-ups, they get a heck of a lot more effective and more powerful for everyday life. At least I've found that to be the case.
Yeah, no, it's interesting just seeing how the styles change over the times and how different people influence the bigger community. And a guy like Mike Fitch and the Animal Flow movement, he's the first to say, look, this isn't a completely revolutionary system. These are movements that have been around, but he's sequencing them in a unique way. He's using them in a very cool context, and he's borrowing from different disciplines and creating something new out of all of that. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, he's making people aware of esoteric things and bringing them to light in a community that maybe hasn't seen them before, which is really cool, because people in the calisthenics world, oftentimes we are drawn to things like the pull-ups, the muscle-up, the human flag, these visually amazing things. But like you said, it's important to practice these other movements if you really want to be able to move well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and proficiency is the foundation on which our progress is built, for sure. And I think a lot of that, quote, crack-filling movement is so important for improving our movement proficiency. When you move better, you train better, you live better, you do everything just better. So that's very exciting that stuff is in your Universal Strength Program. So it's 30 days. Now, when someone goes through it, can they redo the 30 days, or is it kind of like the same?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it's similar to the Get Strong program in a sense that some people are coming in and feeling like, oh, the first week of this program is too easy for me, and they write to me on day 2, like, this program's too easy, which I do, and I say, just stick with it, it's going to ramp up. And it's kind of good. It's like you have a deload week built into the program. And other people are writing to me, and they're saying, hey, I'm up to week 2, and I can't keep up with everything. And I say, go back, do week 1 again if you need to. And there's other people who've written to me that they go through the whole 30 days, and they just do everything the best they can. Maybe there's some exercises they can't nail the first time through. And then they get to the end, they say, I'm going to go do the whole program again. They go back, and week 1, they're doing everything with much better form than they did the first time through, and much better confidence on the exercises, so that by the time they cycle around again, so those things that really challenged them the first time, they're better prepared to deal with them. I've got people who've gone through the program 3, 4, 5 times, and finally, by the 5th time, they feel like, okay, now I'm really mastering these movements that are on day 30. So it's just, everyone progresses differently. Everyone's going to find certain things more or less challenging. And that's the other thing that's interesting to observe, is some people write to me, and they say, hey, I'm having a really hard time with this crow pose balancing exercise. And maybe they're killing it on their pistol squat or whatever. And then someone else, it's the complete opposite. So it's interesting to see how different bodies find different aspects of bodyweight training challenging. And that's why it's so cool to have these diverse movements in your arsenal.
Now, the other major thing that you have in your arsenal and your quiver for helping people, of course, is your app that you came out with a couple of years ago, or has it been 3 years now?
The app's been out for, a little over 2 years now.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we've updated it a few times since the first run.
Yeah, and the updates have been pretty good too, but I see that as like very complementary to both the Get Strong and Universal Strength, because in the way it's still structured, but it allows a great deal of freedom and flexibility for people to kind of do their own thing. It's very tutorial. I've used it a lot when my clients are like traveling, and they're like, I need something to do when I'm traveling, and I'm like, well, are you going to be near a gym? And they're like, I don't know. Can you give me something? Here, download this app, because you got zero equipment workouts in there. You've got quick workouts, longer workouts and stuff. And I think that app is along the same idea of structured, autonomous, but it still gives people the ability to modify and change things around as they need. So it's like a trifecta here with Get Strong, Universal Strength, the working out app. It all comes together to help people discover what's best for them on their own. It's the classic Bruce Lee approach of helping people to do things for themselves, but you're still giving them what they need rather than just saying, here, figure it all out on your own.
Oh man, I'm really glad that you like the app and that you've been recommending it to your clients. I'm real happy with how it came out. Like you said, there's always limitations to any medium or any program. And that's why it's good to have multiple programs and multiple mediums. Some people learn better from a book. Some people learn better from an app. Some people are more drawn to a video. And depending on the type of person you are, maybe you have to absorb the information in all of those mediums before it really starts to click and sink in. So it's good to reinforce these concepts even once you're aware of them. Sometimes you don't really process them and internalize them until you've had them drilled into your head a few times from different angles.
Oh man, Lord knows I'm a poster child of that. I need to hear something like 5 or 6 times, and then I'll finally be like, oh, you mean it's like X, Y, and Z? And they're like, yes, Matt, it's that. I've been saying this for 6 months now. Like, you finally get it. But sometimes that's what it takes to really understand and learn some of this stuff.
The obvious oblivious. It's there right in front of you, but you just couldn't see it.
Exactly. And it's easy to digest. That's, I think, the biggest advantage to the stuff that you've put out, is that the information is easy to read, it's easy to listen to, it's easy to digest, because a lot of the understanding comes from digesting it, kind of like our body digests food. It's like our mind has to digest information. But if we find it hard to consume, it just like rejects it and says like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it can't like take the time to process it, versus something that's simple like your stuff. Even if you're like, okay, whatever, you can sit on it for a while and you'll be in the shower or just out for a walk and bang, you're like, oh, now I get it. And suddenly you're off to the races. So I think that's a big advantage to your products is they're so easy to consume. So the digestion process can take place and understanding can come, some of us a long time, like myself, and some people it can come fairly quickly.
Thanks, man. It's kind of similar to what you were saying before about your own journey, how you started using a lot of equipment in the beginning and then gradually over time stripped your workouts down.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've done the same with my teachings. When I was new to being a trainer, I would overload people with more information than they could handle,
Mm-hmm.
getting too technical about anatomy and all this stuff, and people are just like, I don't need to know that. So I've, over the years, tried to streamline my teachings to just the most essential stuff and to try to present it in a way that anyone can hopefully absorb it. And I'm not necessarily looking to impress the other experts in the field. I'm looking to introduce beginners who might be intimidated and make them see, like, oh, this stuff is approachable. And obviously, I still intimidate people sometimes, but that's why I try to smile a lot so that they can see that I'm a welcoming, friendly individual.
Oh, and that you certainly are. I've loved that dichotomy between you and your brother Danny with the attitudes that you bring with like your PCC and SCC workshops and stuff. Like you've got the Al Kavadlo, big beard, big smile, like, let's have fun and joyous. And then you've got Danny's side of like, all right, time to get down and dirty and heavy metal and all that sort of thing. And the two blend together so beautifully. It really is a hell of a 1-2 punch for everything you're doing.
We're lucky we have each other and that we get to work together and train together. And we definitely, like you said, I think our energies complement each other well.
I think one of the biggest lessons I got from both you and Danny, and now, of course, Grace, is that calisthenics can be molded around so many different approaches and personalities and expressions. When I first got into fitness and especially like bodyweight training, I'd find like 1 or 2 personalities online. I'm like, oh, I guess that's the calisthenics approach. Like that's how you have to behave and you say these things and you have these expressions and things like that. But discovering you guys, it's like, well, you got Danny on one side and you got Al on this other side. And then, of course, I'd followed Zach Evanesh for a while. And he was on a whole different spectrum with his approach. So I finally understood it's like, do it your way, I guess is the big lesson for this podcast is universal strength, get strong, your approach. Like, ultimately, to those who are listening, like calisthenics is supposed to be done your way. It's not necessarily Al's way or Danny's way or my way or someone else's way. Like, use us as information, use us as resources, but ultimately find your own way, your own path. And, if that means listening to Frank Sinatra and drinking Chardonnay while you do your push-ups, then have at it. Like, do it your way to get the best results.
I like the Frank Sinatra "Do It Your Way" reference.
Oh man, that's
together there.
I didn't even plan that. I didn't even try that.
That's the subconscious at work. Right?
I found that out by accident one time. I was working out in my basement. I just hit play on something. Some of you listening may not understand, but we used to listen to music on these things called CDs. You didn't have like streaming video, but I had a Frank Sinatra video album in my player for whatever reason. And I hit play, and I was like, whatever, and I just did it. And I had the greatest workout, and I don't know why, but the vibe just matched. So it's like, okay, I guess that's what's one of the best things for me is to listen to Frank Sinatra while I work out.
In that moment it was.
Yeah, at least then it was, exactly. But do it your way. Like, if something is if you're going in a direction and you feel that's best for you, then do that. Don't feel like you have to pigeonhole yourself into one approach or one like perspective on calisthenics because it's so universal, universal strength. You can do it your unique style. So
absolutely. I like to think that, I kind of can open the door for people, but then they're going to walk through it and have their own journey, whatever their journey might be. And I don't want them to have my journey. I want them to have their own experience. I can tell them what my experience was. but I can't have the experience for them. They've got to do that on their own.
I think this is definitely going to be one of the directions that you see a lot of methods and programs and stuff going into in the future, not just in calisthenics, but hopefully fitness as a whole, because for the past, especially 10 years or so with the internet, I feel like there's a lot of this vibe out there of like, this is the program, this is the way you have to do it, this is the correct way, the one correct way. And I get emails from people all the time saying, what if I did this? What if I changed this? Or people are discovering
they
that...
need to ask your permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it funny?
Exactly. Like, do you think it's okay if I do this? I'm like, dude, go right ahead. Like, if you think it's better.
I always find that so interesting when people write to me and they say, hey, Al, I noticed when I do this exercise, I have this pain in my elbow. What should I do? I'm like, well, if you notice that, then maybe don't do that exercise and find a way to do it where it doesn't hurt your elbow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so funny how people, they have an instinct and then they question it and they think, oh, well, this isn't what I read. Someone wrote a book and they never met me, but they know my body better than I know my body.
Right, exactly.
They just need someone else to tell them, hey, your intuition is okay, go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's all I need to say is, yeah, man, if that's what you're feeling, do it. And it seems like such a small thing for me to say that to someone, but it's actually sometimes I think a hugely liberating thing for them to hear. It's like, oh, I have permission to do it my way, because that's not the message that people get from a lot of society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even outside of fitness, like, do it the way you've been told, do it this way. Yeah. But it's not only liberating, like you de-stress so much when you give yourself permission to do things the way you want. But I've always noticed that when I give myself permission to do things kind of my way, man, it's so much more effective 9 times out of 10. And even if I've had people come to me saying like, this research says X, Y, and Z about what you're doing, and this is it. I'm like, hey, what can I tell you? I'm doing it this way, and I'm getting great results. Like, it's kind of the end of the story there.
People want to use academia to disprove your actual real-world experience. And It's like, well, that study that you read about, that's great, but like I actually do pistol squat 3 times a week, and my knees aren't hurt. They're actually really strong and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you saw a study that said that pistol squats are dangerous, but I've been doing them for 15 years, and my knees are fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, along those lines, I used to have terrible knees. My knees used to bother me since I was a kid. And, I had someone the other day tell me, like, do you ever have knee problems doing that? I was doing, like, close squats, I guess. And I was like, oh, I had knee problems most of my life. And they're like, you think that's a good idea? I'm like, yeah, because this fixed the knee problems.
Yeah.
And this took care of it. And
not to say that I don't ever overdo it. I'm pretty open about the fact that I've given myself tendinitis a couple times over the years because I've just been so ambitious with wanting to work on a certain exercise that maybe I let the goal get the better of me. And, I overdid it on be it a one-arm pull-up or a human flag or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that we don't... there is a risk with these things. I'm not trying to say you can't ever get hurt doing calisthenics, because of course you can. There's inherent risk involved with anything, but if you're paying attention to your body, and if you're being mature and smart about your training and learning from those mistakes, I always say you're a lot more likely to injure yourself if you don't work out than if you do.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, of course, anything is potentially risky if it's done by someone who's not ready to do it or someone who's using poor technique.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I full-heartedly agree. And it's still along the lines of adjust and adapt. Adjust and adapt. It's not about finding that one program. Because I think one of the biggest drivers behind someone saying, I want to find the way, the one way to train or do an exercise or whatever, is because we have this inherent need for security and to know for certain what we should be doing. When the reality of training and calisthenics is there's always a little more uncertainty there. There's always a little, not entirely sure. Could be this, could be that. And that can make some people fairly nervous, especially when it comes to something that like fitness where they're like, but I really want to make sure I know what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, wouldn't I too? I sure would.
I mean, that's everything in life, is we're all just trying to figure it out as we go along and make adjustments and observe and react accordingly. And little by little, we acquire some knowledge and some wisdom, but oftentimes the more that you study something, the more you realize how vast it is and how many different ways there are to apply that information. And it just, keeps you interested in it, I think, and it keeps you being a student and a fan of it.
Oh yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than learning more about what you've already learned to a certain degree. Like lately I've been learning how to use my lats more with a bunch of exercises, particularly bridges. And it's like I'm rediscovering the exercise for all over again. Like, man, this feels so good. It feels, my body's responding to it differently, but it's because I had a little uncertainty there that I got to that point. If I was doing bridges and saying, nope, I know exactly how to do it, I know everything there is to know, yada, yada, then I wouldn't have that curiosity to keep figuring things out and say, all right, what else is there here? Maybe I'm missing a little bit of something. And that's where the growth and the discovery comes, and that's where the fun comes from.
Yeah, I mean, if you know everything, then you can't learn anything new. So I would never want to know everything. It's boring.
One of my favorite new sayings is, it's hard to move forward when you know all the answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Little uncertainty is a very good thing.
And keeping an open mind, even if you've done something a lot of times, that it might be different this time. Maybe one day pistol squats will hurt my knees, and if they do, I'll stop doing them, But so far, so good.
Yeah. The open mind is very key, and moving forward. And I guess we all make our own future when it comes to our training. Like we're talking and touching base on a little bit of what's the future of like calisthenics and where's the future of training and stuff. And I guess we're all making our own futures in our own way and having our own developments. And even if the world of calisthenics goes in various directions, it's ultimately about finding your own direction and finding your own path to move forward.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Although I do think in a bigger trend, the world of calisthenics is continuing to grow, and the future of this movement is that it's just going to get bigger and bigger. I remember it's been almost 10 years since the book Convict Conditioning came out. I know that was a big inspiration for you in the bodyweight world, and that was a book that inspired me a lot at the time also. And that book, it's still selling, it's still reaching new people. It hasn't diminished in 10 years, even though there's dozens of other books out there, your books, my books, all these other great products that are also reaching more people and selling. So rather than there being just a handful of gateways for people to discover calisthenics, now there's so many more coaches and programs and people talking about this stuff and bringing new people in every day that I just see the growth of it continuing to, exponentially just get bigger. It's pretty cool to see that happening.
It's mind-blowing. You go on social media, like Instagram in particular, it's fun to watch how 2 years ago, like I got on Instagram, I'm following you and Danny and stuff, and it's like, okay. And now my feed is like almost all bodyweight folks, and the physique and skill development of people now is just mind-blowing, what people are reaching for. But even though we look at these things and think that's so advanced and stuff, it comes down to the basics and the principles that you guys teach in Get Strong, Universal Strength, the app, Convict Conditioning. I think it's still doing well because that's where we still base everything off of. Even the advanced guys are like, get really good at push-ups, get really good at pull-ups. You want to do these fancy tricks on the bar? Well, get really good at pull-ups. And, the programs that you write and Get Strong and stuff are a great place to build your foundation and continue to grow off of that foundation.
Right on. Yeah, it's exciting. Every time I hear from somebody new who's just discovered one of these programs and is seeing for themselves how profound of a change you can make with bodyweight training. And people are always skeptical in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can I really, without using weights, really? And when they've done it for a few weeks or a few months and they are stronger than they've ever been and leaner and feeling good, then they're converted, and then they want to tell everyone else about it too. It's one of those things that once people have experienced it, they want everyone they know to jump on the train too.
Mm-hmm. I always just give them the whole, think about this. Like, how much do you weigh? You know, and they're like, 190 pounds. So if I came into your gym and gave you a 190-pound dumbbell, you wouldn't get strong with that? Because this is still weightlifting. This is still weightlifting. You are a weight.
That's right. Your body doesn't really know the difference whether that resistance is internal or external.
Mm-hmm.
It just knows the muscle's being overloaded and it needs to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one of the things that I'm often talking about in my writings and teachings about calisthenics, and just observe again and again, people who come from that weight training world get a reality check on their body composition. Because people can lift a lot of weight and they think they're really strong. And then we put them on the pull-up bar, and they can't do much when the resistance is relative to their strength, rather than just, I'm a big guy and I can move a big weight. It's like, now you're a big guy and can you actually move yourself?
Mm-hmm.
People get a humbling sometimes, and it goes one of two ways. Sometimes it's really eye-opening, and they love it, and they love the challenge. And other times it's frustrating. Like, I don't want to do this because I'm bad at it, and I want to just do the thing that I'm good at already.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, I guess I'm guilty of the opposite. Part of what drew me to calisthenics was I was never going to be the biggest guy in the gym, and I was never going to be able to lift the most weight. But I thought, if I put myself on a pound-for-pound spectrum rather than an absolute spectrum, it levels that playing field between bigger people and smaller people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly that. I've always kind of looked at it like, especially with individuals who are a little overweight, and because I get a not pushback, but a little more resistance from individuals who are overweight, and they're like, bodyweight training is totally out of the picture because I'm carrying extra weight. And to that, I always say, think about it this way. Like, everywhere you go right now, people and doctors and experts are treating your weight like a liability. Like, you've got all this weight, you're setting yourself up for heart disease, and it's bad for the joints. And everybody's saying excess weight is a liability. But when you start doing activities that move your body around, not even push-ups and pull-ups, just walking around or a little animal flow or whatnot, suddenly that weight is an asset because it's challenging you to a higher level. Exactly. And I really do think there's something to that theory that Paul Wade talks about in convict conditioning, where he's like, you start moving that weight around, and there's like a subliminal conscious link that says it's hard to move this weight, so I need to get lighter, but obviously I'm not going to lose muscle because I also need to be stronger, and they start losing weight a little bit easier.
There's a sweet spot for efficiency,
mm-hmm.
Where you have a high amount of muscle mass and a low amount of body fat. And whether you're talking about calisthenics or any sort of athletic performance, you're going to find there's a sweet spot. And it's different for different things. For calisthenics, that sweet spot is going to be a little lighter than it might be for powerlifting
mm-hmm.
or something of that nature. But, as for the idea that being heavier makes it better resistance for you, that's true. But I think ideally you would want to lose that weight and
mm-hmm.
then be able to do more advanced things with the more efficient body
mm-hmm.
that has more muscle and less fat.
Yeah, totally.
But that's a great way to psychologically approach it,
mm-hmm.
to get that person out of the mindset, that negative mindset about calisthenics.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were saying, the psychology is oftentimes the bigger hurdle than the actual workout itself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, a lot of it's so much in perception. Because people, I don't know how many times people have told me, hate push-ups. Push-ups are the worst. Don't ever make me do push-ups. And I won't. I'm never going to force anybody to do anything. But they'll be like, we're just going to warm you up with pushing against this wall here just to get some range of motion in the shoulders. And stuff. And they're like, okay, now I feel kind of warm in the triceps and chest. That was kind of fun. I'm like, well, those are push-ups. It's just a different variation. Family. Exactly. And it's a good introduction for them. But the future is looking bright, Al. I mean, you're doing amazing things for bringing calisthenics into the next century with everything that you're working on with your universal strength to get strong. I like how these programs have an endurance effect. They're not going to be a fad. Like, we're not going to be around the dinner table 10 years from now. You're like, oh, remember Get Strong? Oh, yeah, that was, can you believe we actually thought that would work kind of thing? No, I mean, that's a book and the programs that 20 years from now, they're still going to work because they're based off of the principles that you always talk about and teach. So is that a place where you would recommend that people get started with Get Strong, Universal Strength, or would you have... Yeah.
I think they're both good choices. Like I said, it's about what people have available to them. For someone who doesn't have any equipment at all, if you're just working out from home and you've got your living room floor and nothing else, Universal Strength, that's exactly the situation that I designed that program for. Mm-hmm. For people who've got access to a pull-up bar, if they've got one at home or in the backyard or whatever, and they want to do more stuff using the bar, then Get Strong is the program for them. So I would say really that's the main factor. And I want people to have options because not everyone's got the bar. If you got the bar, Get Strong. If you don't have a bar, try Universal Strength. And I hope you're right. I hope these programs are still relevant and viable in 10 or 20 years. I mean, obviously the exercises themselves are timeless. But where will our culture be, our fitness culture be in 10 or 20 years? Will this still be something that people are drawn to, or will there be something else that's gotten people's attention? I don't know. I'm curious to see.
Yeah. It seems like things are accelerating these days at a faster pace, too, where I think of...
There's more information created every single day than there was the day before, right? More people posting articles and videos and sharing their experiences, which is a mixed blessing, I think. Yes,
it's a lot, but at the same time, it's
too much to sift through because some of it's not very good.
Yeah, there's a lot like on Amazon. Like there's a lot of great self-published books out there, and at the same time, I look at some of these things and I'm like, seriously, did this take maybe an hour to write? Like I don't know if this person put a lot into this.
Well, there's a lot of unfortunate people who just want to try to cash in on what they see as a trend and try to put out a crappy product or just a product that, like you said, that they can create very, very quickly with very little effort, which is most likely not going to be a good product, in an attempt to turn a quick profit. As opposed to, I think, you and me are both coming from a place of we genuinely love this stuff, we live this stuff. We would be writing this stuff and doing this. I mean, I was blogging and putting stuff on YouTube for years before I really made any money off of it, just because I just had this burning feeling in me, like I just have to share this stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, ultimately that did lead to me being able to make a living off of it, which is really cool. And some people get into it, they put the cart before the horse. It's the same thing with working out. Some people get into it because it's like, I just want the end result. And they want to bypass the whole journey. But the journey's where it's at, you know?
The process.
Yeah.
If you love the process, the results will come just as automatically in an amount of time. But yeah, if you're there for just the result and you don't love the process, then it's going to be a pretty hard ride for you.
Yeah. And ultimately, you know, those fitness products that aren't legit, they don't stick around. You know, we that's why we see these fads come and go, and I think that's why bodyweight is going to have longevity, because it is legit. It's not a gimmick. It's not a shake weight. It's not some BS thing that let's just try to con as many people as we can before they figure out that it's BS and run away with bags full of money and go live on an island. The proof is in the pudding, and people are getting results from it.
Besides, once you're on that island, like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to resort to bodyweight training because you got the tree branches and you got the sand and everything there too. But yeah, I think I have a lot of hope for the future. I think there's going to be some great stuff that comes about, but we have to be a little optimistically cautious with some of the trends and fads that can distract us.
Skepticism is good. I encourage people to be skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
And but I also encourage people to try things. You can be skeptical, but also be open, guardedly optimistic.
There we go. I like that.
Some people have too unrealistic of an expectation,
mm-hmm.
And it's not always their fault if they do.
Yeah.
So it's good to be a little cautious when you go into these things. Otherwise, you might be disappointed and frustrated. And I think that happens a lot with fitness. Is people are given a misleading expectation,
mm-hmm.
and then when they don't reach that expectation, they think, I'm just never going to be fit. Screw this.
Yeah. Which, again, I think that's a big advantage of bodyweight training, though, because I think a lot of people get into this maybe hoping for the big, fast result, but there's a lot of emotional and mental reward that comes from moving yourself through space. It's not like sitting on a weight machine or a treadmill where you'd be like, well, I wouldn't be doing this unless I could get this great result. But there's a reward with hanging off of a bar and you stretch yourself out and you feel nice and loose afterwards. And people will say, well, it's going to take time, but I'm really enjoying doing this or moving myself along the floor. So they find that they enjoy doing it for the sake of doing it. And then they're off to the races. And I've always believed that's a big advantage of bodyweight.
I think that's the key. And as a coach, before I was ever on YouTube or writing books, I was just training people in person for many, many years. And I think that's why I developed what we were talking about before, the idea of just trying to make the information as accessible and enjoyable as possible, because that's how you're going to get people to actually see it through to the end. If someone's only doing the workout as a means to an end, like you said, they're not going to stick with it. But if the process itself is fun, if the workout is something they enjoy, nobody has to do it because they have to do it. I always say you're lucky you get to do this. And if people can flip that switch in their mind, they're like, oh, this actually feels good. And after the workout's done, my body feels better, my mind feels clearer. And that's the reason to keep doing it, not because you're going to get a six-pack. And the six-pack will come in time if you stay the course. But the thing that keeps you with it is it just feels good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's short-term gratification to fulfill long-term goals. Like in the short term, I'm going to feel good doing this. I'm going to enjoy blowing off this stress. Yes, the long-term goals are to lose 30 pounds or get six-pack or something.
The long-term goal's too far away. Just get to the next lamppost before you worry about crossing the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
You don't run a marathon by thinking about the finish the whole time. You run a marathon, you just put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep doing that, and you stay present, and eventually it's just, this is just one more footfall in thousands and thousands of footfall, but that's the one that you finally cross the finish line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you think of that finish line on mile 5, and you're like, I've got 19 miles to go, the emotional weight,
experience.
It's crushing. But next step, and again, get strong and universal strength. It's like, here's the next little challenge. Here's what you do for the next day. And it's a step-by-step progression system. And then at the end of the month, you're like, wow, look how far I've come. Or the end of the program. So
the footfall that crosses the finish line is no more important than any of the other thousands of ones in the whole race. They just take each step with care and attention and enjoy it.
And you get there. Well, Al, this has been an amazing conversation, man. I've got so many good takeaways. I think we covered some very exciting and very important points in the world of calisthenics, bodyweight training, the future of it, and just practical application here. Like, what is the reality of what we're facing about bodyweight training and what it really takes? Do you have any big points that you want to add before we close up here?
I guess for my final thought, my advice or my homework for anyone who's listening and still isn't exactly sure what they can do right now is just to set a very small goal for yourself, to just do something today that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And if that means doing any workout at all because you haven't worked out in a while, then just start small and do 10 push-ups and 10 squats. And if that's enough for you, then call it a day. And if that means you've been going beast mode for a while and maybe you need to take it easy and have a day where you just stretch and not push yourself too hard. Maybe for some people, that's going to be the thing that is outside of their comfort zone. But whatever the thing that you're always used to doing is, try to challenge yourself to do something a little different today.
Good words. I'll give, to those who are listening, I'll give you some steps right here that you can do. Check out Al Kavadlo on YouTube, Instagram. He's got a ton of stuff that he's cranking out every day on Instagram. It's fun, it's inspirational, it's informative. It's well worth going to Instagram and checking out his posts, and as well as Grace's and Danny Kavadlo's as well. Check out the Get Strong challenge. Where is that going to be located, the challenge itself? The Facebook group?
Yeah, there's a Facebook group for Get Strong. So people, they can get the book, they can get it on Amazon, they can get it from my website. And then once they get the book, they can join the Facebook group, and they can post their before and after pictures and talk about the journey and commiserate with other people who are doing the same program.
Perfect.
And Danny and I, we jump in on that group pretty often and answer people's questions and stuff too.
Perfect. Yeah, and to those who are listening, it takes nothing. Just if you're listening right now, get out your phone, Facebook, check it out right now. It's not a big step, but just go look at these things, check it out, start investigating it, look at, download Al's app, Working Out, right? It's called?
If they just search my name in the App Store, they'll find it. Kavadlo, Kavadlo.
Yeah, check out his app. Check out the Get Strong Challenge, Universal Strength. It doesn't take much, folks, to just put one foot in front of the other from where you're right now, but that's all it takes to get started on the journey and start moving forward. As always, I'll have links to everything Al Kavadlo on the website. If you're not listening to this as well, the post on the website at reddeltaproject.com. I'll have Facebook, Instagram, links to the challenge. Everything that you can find will be on that page as well. Al, thank you so much for coming on and being a guest again on the Red Delta Project podcast. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Hey. We're working out.
All right. Take care, folks. Talk to you later. Be fit and live free.